SA Tourism has come out in defense of their proposed plan to sponsor English football club Tottenham Hotspur. During a media briefing yesterday, acting CEO Themba Khumalo said the deal has nothing to do with football, but rather is aiming to attract tourists on an international scale. Let's unpack this proposed deal and perhaps even the fallout against Tourism SA. Bring in our guest. The CEO of Decode Communications is Lorato Ntekeng, who joins us via video link. Also with us is the CEO of BWD Advertising, Bongani Kosa. To both our guests, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's lovely to have you on the AM Report. Lorato, perhaps I can begin with you. Part of what's featured in this debate is the question around whether South Africa has a visibility problem or an image problem justifying this 1 billion rand spend.
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers. I know that, one of the things that perhaps we should first accept is that, marketing, nation branding and nation marketing organizations and companies exist for a reason, right? They exist to ensure that they are able to, one, raise their public image of the respective countries. In this case, Tourism South Africa would always be pleading the case of South Africa to tourists, both locally and internationally. Of course, if you consider the many things, that are bedeviling the country, whether it's crime, whether it's, corruption, maladministration, and many others, of course, public image will always be an issue. With visibility, anyone who does, or at least is in the craft of marketing, PR, and comms, we understand that you never arrive at visibility to say that we've achieved our brand awareness and visibility targets. Right. It's an ongoing thing, and you therefore need to always be connecting with audiences on a regular basis.
That is interesting, but I'm not sure if I'm any clearer about whether or not we've been able to draw a distinction between whether or not the issue here that needs to be addressed, the issue around South African tourism struggling to attract numbers, is because we're not visible enough. For instance, the argument being made even by South Africans abroad is that people know about the country. It's not the fact that people don't know where it is or are not keen to arrive. But part of the reason why they're not arriving is because there are issues in this country that they feel need to be dealt with first.
It is possible that argument can be made, Ayanda. But one thing that must also be clear is that if you reduce this potential sponsorship to only a branding or a logo on the T-shirt or on the sleeve, that is too simplistic, right? At least, we got a little bit of detail when the acting CEO yesterday was telling us that there will be on-the-ground activations. For instance, the team will tour South Africa and the likes. And if you consider a marketing campaign, those are some of the elements that are included. In fact, the branding on the sleeve or on the T-shirt, it is just part of top of mindedness in terms of you and I seeing the brand. The actual connection is going to be a lot more of other activations that are going to be done on the ground, where now they connect with the potential tourists, whether it's business or leisure buyers. So that we have problems in South Africa. I do not think that we should be saying that we need to pause and not market to those tourists. And lastly, he has also indicated that if you look at the numbers pre-COVID and now, definitely there was a dip, and now there's an effort that is required to be put in ensuring that they achieve the targets that they had set for themselves. We know that there's a target of some, I think something like about 21 million visitors that they are targeting, which has a rand number to it in terms of what we need to do to be able to attract those 21 million visitors and the return on investment.
Right. There were conversations around the kind of compound effects that would unfold if this deal were to go ahead. But Bongani, the strategy is one part of the discussion. The price tag is another. I wonder, with these two things in mind, whether the deal makes sense to you.
Ayanda, thanks again for having me. I just want to start off by declaring that I have done a little bit of work on say tourism. So suppose you can say I have a little bit of an insider's perspective.
Sure.
I'll say I can argue that this is arguably the best deal to come out of the best advertising initiative to come out of SA tourism since the short left campaign. Let me tell you what. Tourism is a significant contributor to the economy because according to stats say 1 in every 22 people is employed. It's formally employed in the tourism sector. Number 2, when you look at our tourism numbers from 2019, because remember COVID destroyed tourism. COVID destroyed tourism in 2020. But when you look at our numbers at 2019, tourism was bringing in 209 billion of revenue per annum into the country, right? So if we contextualize the 1 billion relative to the to that number from 2019, it's 0.5%. So in essence, I would even argue that a billion is not enough for us to invest because it's only 0.5%. So hence I'm saying this is arguably the best marketing initiative to come out of SA tourism. And also let's not forget that what COVID did to our tourism sector, it took it down by a good 72%. So we are actually still recovering from COVID even now. So we're actually playing catch up. So hence I'm saying that this is the best thing. And also another argument that I would make is that if you look at the visit to Rwanda with Arsenal, when you do like basic online research, it says tourism increased by 8% in the first year of that initiative going live. Yeah. So let's just go back to the 2019 numbers, which was 200 billion per annum. That would imply that with a 1 billion rand investment, we would generate a good 16 billion per year. And let's keep in mind that this deal is over 3 years. So if you take 16 billion and then you multiply that by 3, it's a no-brainer that this thing it's a great deal.
That's interesting. You know, there's a concept in economics called ceteris paribus, and that speaks to the idea of keeping everything else constant, and that's how essentially people in economics kind of work their modeling. But in our country, what is not constant, for instance, with the situation in Rwanda, some people might argue, is that it is a considerably safer place. It feels like the government there has done strides in trying to turn the tide. And again, this concept of the image of the country on a global stage is still intact. What's your response to that concern, Bongani?
When it comes to visitor safety, we're not doing too bad, if we have to be honest. Just last year, I think we only had, if I'm not mistaken, 2, if not 1 incident of the German tourists somewhere in Mpumalanga. If you look at the bigger tourism numbers, that number is statistically low. So it's not an entirely bad number. Things do happen in other countries.
All right.
And they will happen in our own country.
Sure. Lorato, you work in communications, and part of what's also emerged in the discussion is just the way in which yesterday's briefing unfolded, right? There's something to be said about ways of communicating in a crisis. Tone, reading the room, being able to at least address some of the concerns that people have about whatever it is you're communicating. On that score, do you reckon Tourism South Africa is better off or worse off than having it spoken out about this deal the way that it actually unfolded yesterday?
So firstly, kudos to Tourism SA for, not hiding their head in the sand and, in the name of we still have to find information or do this and that. The story came out the day before, and the next day, they were literally first out of the blocks with a press briefing, almost a blow-by-blow kind of. Of course, there were a lot of detail that was withheld because of the confidentiality clauses that the CEO had mentioned, right? But importantly, one of the things that and those were just almost fundamental errors that the CEO had committed. he was visibly angry, understandably so, right? And one of the things that I had shared yesterday on Twitter was that in any space, the expectation should be that there is going to be a leak, right? When two or more people meet, there should be an anticipation that something is going to leak. The preparation of how you deal with that leak is a completely different thing, right? So if you think about, his statement around, we're going to deal with the person who leaked this information. The biggest question is, again, from a public image point of view, just this past weekend, the front page of the Sunday Times was with a story of, a woman who was telling how, she had been literally struggling because she was a whistleblower, right? And whether the person who leaked the information did it for good, right, or bad reasons, it's a completely different story, right? Whether there are things that may be hidden that we do not know, that we are likely to discover at a later stage, it's a different story, right? But creating the impression that, when somebody blows the whistle or shares the information confidential as it is, that you are going to find them, hound them, and that you are perpetuating, this issue around we don't tolerate whistleblowers. In fact, to the point where we put their lives in danger and the like. The other issue was the way in which he was addressing South Africans and the media professionals in the room, right? You say a billion with a B. You do not patronize journalists when, they've gathered in a space and you know that they are a conduit for your message. Of course, there was an acknowledgement, and I guess, Tandiwe, as a consummate PR professional, had indicated to him that, sir, you're speaking too loud, you're shouting at South Africans, and he then came on to apologize. And again, that was a mistake. Ordinarily, when somebody does, or at least when you apologize like that, it is as if you are saying, I don't recognize that I made a mistake. Somebody just told me that I must apologize to you. So tactically, there were just a few things that were done wrong, but there were many things that they did right. At least sharing the detail that we're able to do. I was able to follow a few interviews that they did later in the evening, and they shared good detail. And perhaps now, one of the things that should be important is that if the board were to now say, we own this process, because this is not Tourism SA or the executive's responsibility only. As the board, we own this process. We have conditionally approved this deal. But lastly, the stakeholder engagement and consultation is going to be facilitated by us. The shareholder is going to be speaking to us and not necessarily the executive.
Yeah. In 30 seconds, Bongani, if you can, part of what this moment has also revealed to us is that there are very few campaigns anybody, quite frankly, I think, can run without thinking about the context in which those campaigns are actually being conducted. And perhaps this is another teaching moment insofar as that is concerned.
No. I am in full agreement. But when you look at this, remember, any good campaign is based on good research, data, and insights. So when you look at the data, research, and insights, they just speak for themselves that this was the best deal to come out of Tourism SA. As I mentioned, that the problems that when you look at $1 billion, we tend to look at it in isolation. But if you look at it in context of the research, you can see that, this is a no-brainer. This deal must go through. It should have been signed last year if possible.
All right. Bongani Kosa with BWD Advertising. Also there joining us is Loratin King, who's the CEO of Decode Communications. Gentlemen, once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.